Welcome to this edition of Dad's Divorce Live. I'm Matt Allen, editor of DadsDivorce.com and Men'sRights.com. On today's show, we're joined by friends of the show, Jill Egizii and Judge Michele Lowrance, who have teamed together to create the workbook Parental Alienation 911, which is a compilation of research, expert interviews, and solutions to apply to real cases. Now, Jill is an alienated mother and the president of the Parental Alienation Awareness Organization, and Michele has been a domestic relations judge since 1995 and frequently appears on nationally syndicated TV and radio shows. Now, you can learn more about the book, about Jill and Michele, and you can even order the book by visiting the website parentalalienation911.net. So Jill and Michele, thanks again for joining me today.
Wow, thanks, Matt. What an introduction. That was terrific.
Thank you very much. It's great to be talking to you again.
Yeah, it is good.
We've done a couple of shows together.
Yeah, I know, and I know.
So I know you know what you're doing.
And I appreciate you guys coming on my show today again to talk about your new endeavor. So let's get right into it. You've each written books. I know, Michele, you've written The Good Karma Divorce, and Jill, you've also written a book that deals with divorce and parental alienation. So what made the two of you come together to combine forces for this new book, Parental Alienation 911?
Well, I think, Matt, with my book, The Novel, The Look of Love, and Michele's book, The Good Karma Divorce, two very different books, but working towards the same goal for a change in divorce culture, for increased awareness and education. And this book, this workbook, we felt was so important to alienated parents, legal and mental health professionals, because this information was out there in pieces, some of it, but never had been assembled in one great work that was going to really help people through the journey of parental alienation and then help others to understand the dynamic. And I think, you have to look at Michele and what she's doing in Chicago in her courtroom and really statewide now because she's teaching all the judges in Illinois. But there's never been a work written by a sitting family court judge that has so much incredible knowledge to add to the advocacy part of it, which was my part.
Mm-hmm. So who is this book intended for?
This is Michele. I think our original motivation for this was Jill alone gets, maybe exaggerating, but not by much, hundreds of phone calls a day with people who really need help. When we do the radio show on parental alienation twice a month, we get all these callers and all these people in the chat room. And one of the themes, there's all kinds of agony in all kinds of ways to suffer in life, but one of the themes that we were seeing that was unique to parental alienation is that they were really getting emotionally destroyed, and couple that with not really doing all that they were could be doing to help themselves, and a lot of times sabotaging themselves in court because they were becoming reactive to the bad behavior of the alienating parent. And there was so much people didn't know that they were doing to hurt themselves. And Jill couldn't possibly be talking to these people all the time.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, and we thought we need to sit down and really write something that helps the people save their own hearts and souls. I need to tell the people what they're doing in court that's not working. I need to give the judicial perspective because, truthfully, a lot of times therapy is not the answer unless it's reconciliation therapy, which most people don't get.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes the only answer is the courts, so people rely on us, and they need to know how to behave.
So, Joe, I want to ask you, why did you decide to offer this in a workbook form? What's the difference between the format of your book compared to the other books out there that touch on parental alienation?
Well, I think, Matt, there's nothing easy about any of this. It is all work. So being an alienated parent, being a child of alienation, it's all a very difficult process, more difficult than any job you could ever go to. And for me, this is a full-time, unpaid job that I do trying to help people. And Michele, is out there every day trying to make changes. And so I think the workbook, we wanted people to actually sit down and think about their own personal situations and be able to answer questions and go through exercises that allowed them to get to the end goal for us, which was to try to be better clients, better people, if you're representing yourself pro se, just a better presenter in court, how to deal with certain issues of the 3 levels of parental alienation, and how to deal with a child that is being disrespectful. So the workbook gives people an opportunity to actually sit down and really put some thought into it other than the sadness and heartbreak that they're thinking about continuously.
And how to manage anger.
Right.
And skills for all. We took a survey between each other, made a list of every single kind of agony you could go through, and then addressed each one of them with the skills. Because the gist of it is, Matt, to keep people in the fight, to keep them from not giving up. And they needed tools to do this because really it's so chaotic that people were like, in a wearing blender with the lid off. And we wanted to make sense of everything. So you can do this, and here's how. So it's so much of a here's how. And there is hardcore. I mean, there's other books and studies that are very clinical and wonderful and say this is what it is and this is how you identify it. But this is very personal to the person going through it. And for lawyers, really, who need to know how to do these cases and walk their clients through it, too.
And the other part about it, Matt, is that we've used information and mentioned people who are in the parental alienation arena, which I always call the big, small world of parental alienation, because there's only a handful of mental health and legal professionals in the world that even understand the dynamic. So we've used information from those people, we've quoted them, and we've got their names out there now, so that people like me 8 years ago who had no idea what was out there as far as resources can refer to these names, go to their websites, look up the information that they've put out there, which might be clinical information, but something that they need to know to arm themselves with to travel the journey.
Well, finally, I wanted to ask you, Michele, since we do have a rare opportunity to talk with an actual sitting family law judge, how prevalent is parental alienation evident in the cases that come before you? Have you noticed an increase or decrease in the amount of alienation found, or do you find people are more aware of what parental alienation is?
Interesting, unfortunate statistic. There's a study that shows that 80% of all cases have some form of parental alienation.
Wow.
And 20% of those cases, it happens on a daily basis. And I want to say this to you, and this is how I really got involved in parental alienation, thanks to Jill. When I wrote the book, I felt that there was a lot of damage happening to children just because of the way that the system is, and just because of the way that usually it's the fathers who have to fight for expanded visitation and going beyond the 15%, even with very involved fathers. So because we're in a blame-based system, people come in the adversarial mode, mother against father, too often breeds. To make yourself feel secure, you want to marginalize the other parent because people think that enhances their safety with their child.
Right.
When I mean safety, I mean security, emotional. So I think it happens way too much, even in lightweight cases. It's not even okay to raise your eyebrow when the visiting parent comes. I mean, it happens light and then it happens deeply. It happens way too often in court. Severe alienation with the red zone, where there's absolutely no contact, too often, it's not prevalent, but you see it way too much. And the point of it is for the judges and the lawyers is to know how to nip it in the bud, because it doesn't get better. It doesn't usually resolve itself. It usually gets worse. So you really need to know what to do early on, and we've made some of those suggestions.
Okay. Well, obviously,
and been very informed by, great people like Brian Ludmer, who is a phenomenal lawyer, who deals with this, and Amy Baker and Michael Bone, and
Craig Childress, Bill Burnett. They're all out there.
Yeah, we've had several of those names you mentioned on our show before, and it just sort of goes to reinforce the point that parental alienation is a huge issue that hopefully doesn't continue to keep growing and be found in, as Michele said, 80% of cases.
I mean, there's plenty of alienated moms, but
right.
mainly the statistics are for dads. And mainly, dads, and I think you're following, needs to know how this happened in the very, very small stages as part of just general parenting. I don't think you can afford to. I'm not saying go buy the book, but I'm saying you need to, however you want to get there, to really understand what a little bit of this kind of behavior, oh, your father left us, we'll say it's true. A statement like that, very damaging to children, very damaging to the relationship. Oh, your father had better things to do than come. He had to go out with his girlfriend.
Right.
Very damaging. So you want to teach your listeners how to at least be aware and track it, because sometimes people can't believe it's possible. Mm-hmm. Right, Jill? That's the main thing.
That's exactly right. I wish Matt would have a show that targets the people who actually say those things to make them understand that they're wrong, so that somebody doesn't have to track what they're saying. Wouldn't that make more sense?
But you're right, Jill, because people, a mom, let's say, we're just using that as an example, could go either way, might say that and not really get
right.
the damage.
The damage, because the majority of people do love their children. They don't want to hurt their children. They just need to be educated of why these things are damaging, how it destroys their brain development, how it destroys their ability to feel safe in the world, even in the small, what we're calling the yellow zone.
Well, Jill and Michele, I want to thank you so much for joining me again, always having a willingness to talk about parental alienation and divorce to our viewers, and continued success with your advocacy, and best of luck with your book.
Thanks so much, Matt.
And thank you for always being there to bring information to the world, Matt.
Yeah, we appreciate you for what you do.
We appreciate that you exist.
Well, thank you. That's very nice of you. Well, thank you. That was Jill Egizii, again, the president of Parental Alienation Awareness Organization, and Judge Michele Lowrance, who is a family law judge in Chicago, and they have teamed together for their new book, Parental Alienation 911, which you can learn more about and order on the website parentalalienation911.net. That'll do it for this edition of Dad's Divorce Live. I'm Matt Allen, editor of DadsDivorce.com and mensrights.com.